Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be listening to the final part of What If Deku Didn't Believe All Might and Remained Quirkless. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 27, Creeper. Ah man, we're 3 seconds away from falling off a train platform, but at least we ain't exploding. Izuku was swarmed when he walked off the train. He should have seen it coming, seeing as Present Mike had tweeted about it. It didn't matter what viewership Tea Kettle already had. It had blown up since. In the same manner, so had Fighting Quirkism _. The whole world seemed to have heard of it in the period of time he had gone to sleep and got on the train. The account had received a boost in followers and likes, which half of what they previously had. They went from 100k to 150k in a matter of hours. His phone was still beeping in succession. It was constant. On the train, his and Eureka's phones buzzed at the same time. They looked eye to eye. It didn't take a genius to figure out what it meant. I'm going to have to turn vibrations off in class. Izuwa-sensei will kill me otherwise. She joked. Izuku chuckled. God, I never thought we'd go viral. I thought it'd be a steady stream before we dropped off the face of planet Earth and left our children to clean up the mess. Your kids would make more mess. True, the news reporters will have a field day that I actually had kids. I can see the headlines now. Last Quirkless man alive has children. Quirkless kids enter the world. We interviewed a Quirkless man's offspring, not clickbait. My life will be biographed in an intern's exam paper and I will be remembered forever. Face it, Okako. I am more famous than the hero in training Urevite. I mean, I think infamous might be the right word. Infamous. The Sun already has an article based off everything online. You're the kid who's going to burn the world down and you're a force of nature, and they basically started a hate club. Oh. Yes, oh. They sat in silence. The carriage rocked about. Izuku picked at his nails. Nothing happened. No one had recognized him. They saw him every day. To everyone on the train he was an everyday passenger. It refreshed him. On the platform people gawked like he was an animal on display. At school every set of eyes would be on him. Most people were on Twitter. They had been fortunate to get on the trending tab. The description explained what it was about. That was as far as Midoriya had dared venture. No one was talking to him. He swiped up and clicked the hashtag. With a straight face, he explored what people said. Gregory retweeted "Put your hands up radio, anyone who stuck around from months ago may remember some spunky kids who were making their own podcast. You can check out their most recent and potentially most important episode here on fightingquirkism-tkettle.com/fightingquirkism/download. Coffee Kettle, I see lots of people talking about the Fighting Quirkism podcast and asking where you can find me information. Tatsuo and Akiko have done more podcasts on how oppression can be systematic, and obviously Fighting Quirkism _ has a lot on the subject of Quirkism and how the system upholds it. Smiley face, kitty cat, glad to see Fighting Quirkism finally trending. Kuji Kizzy, as a certified history freak, the laws were not drafted by the quirkless but by people with quirks. They knew they would eventually be the majority, thus why the laws were detrimental then and powerful now. The quirkless passed them because they didn't think that far when the country was burning down. Join the bat Fighting Quirkism. VLQ, pent ions to sign for you to start Fighting Quirkism with. Viva la Quirkless. Karen Smith, okay, but maybe instead of Fighting Quirkism, they start pulling their weight? Bob Paul, Fighting Quirkism is cool and all, but can we not promote Viva la Quirkless? The rising tag for direct helps and not discussion, etc. It's literally gonna end with world destruction. Sarah C responded to Bob Paul, mate, they're literally the same thing. Viva la Quirkless is also about what they've done for us historically and the past mistreatment as well as current. The tweets went on. There were several pensions to sign from parents whose kids had been attacked or lost their job. Retweets went round like wildfire as people shared the best ways to help. He grinned and gripped his phone a little tighter. Have you checked Twitter yet? It's being kind for once. He asked Eureka. She had also gone on her phone and was scrolling down. Viva la Quirkless, right? It's catchy, I have to give them that. Alive, long live the Quirkless, I think. Spanish. She explained, also, we should totally steal some of the stuff circulating right now. It turns out accounts like ours have existed for years on here. We should make the most of it. Our fame, I mean. Boost them while we can. Izuku nodded. I'll grab Shinsu at lunch. We can go through and figure out what's legitimate and not. It'll be great to find out more as well. Never knew Twitter as good place for people like me. We might find more on. He stopped talking and bounced on his seat. He shook. As the two had talked, he had begun to smile from one side of his mouth. It took a few minutes for him to stop. Right? We should also get Mike and Midnight if we can. They'll be good help as well with who and when we should boost. Also books. UA should have a library. I've been relying on the area I've gone, but that's only the gym's cafeteria and the classrooms. Did you guys get a map on your first day? Eureka asked. Izuku rummaged in his bag. He had been given one on day one. He knew he had it in his bag. It was buried deep in the realms of sweet wrappers and loose papers. The planner had yet to be touched once. He never saw his classmates use them either. It didn't do its job. Eureka looked over to see the words backwards. There is a library. I actually didn't expect that. She whispered as the train halted to a stop. The carriage shook as they looked out the window. The scenery wasn't passing like usually did. Izuku glanced at Eureka. They stop when there's a villain attack near the tracks. It's to do the risks of passengers getting injured in the attack fight or aftermath. It's either just happened or is a small one. We'll be fine, don't panic. Izuku reassured as he went back to the map on the table. The library looks as if it's by the third years. That makes sense, seeing laws and everything are studied in the third year. Right, so third floor on the general education side of the school. It's around 5 or so minutes, I would guess, from my classroom. We would have to skip lunch if we want to go there. I would say do that today and talk to Mike with our newfound facts. That's the most time-efficient plan. Right? I'll eat at lunch then, and you had better tell Shinsu he has to as well. Also, do you want to draft up what kind of information we're looking for? There's bound to be a lot of information, so that would be the best option. All eyes were on them. Unbeknownst to the two, everyone was watching and drawing in the mindless chatter. Train stopping had been part of the procedures kids learned in their hero phrase. It was soothing that not everyone had gone into full-blown panic. Izuku picked up on the silence that surrounded him. The eyes didn't bear into him, they were more like small pin pricks all over his side. He lifted his head and looked around at everyone staring at him. When Eureka stopped, there was silence on the train. It stayed still. Do you two know what the villain attack's like? A passenger asked. Not as much as you do. I just don't think it's bad because we should have stopped far enough from the action, and I haven't seen any action so far. Eureka explained with a shaky smile. Everyone nodded and moved away. Eureka's shoulders tensed as Midoriya made no effort to continue their previous conversation. He shook as if the previous stares had been icicles shot in his skin. His planner lay open on the table. Izuku rested his arm on it as he looked through his phone with empty eyes. Okako poked him. The finger was annoying, but Midoriya looked up to try and swat it away. He sighed as she continued to prod him. Come on, you've gone all dead on me. What are you looking at? Midoriya sighed as he placed his phone down. The web page was news. Always the news. I was looking for why we had stopped. Unexpected villain attack. Heroes don't know the quirk, but I would guess gigantification from what's been seen. Depending on the limits, we could be in the crossfire. The odds are low, but you never know with the odds. She put a hand beside him. It's going to be fine. The odds are low, like you said. We'll be fine. The train wobbled a little. It wouldn't have been noticeable if they had been moving. The slight shake led to a shriek from people around the carriage. In the seats beside them were clinging to one another. Izuku readjusted where he sat and placed his hands on the table. He twiddled his thumbs while Eureka gripped the ledge, as if letting it go would be the end of the world. News should have come from the radio if they were moving. It hadn't wobbled beforehand. Against his better judgment, Midoriya looked outside of the window. He hadn't known what to expect the outside to look like in the midst of a long-drawn villain attack. Long-term didn't mean high risk of civilian deaths. They would have been evacuated if the heroes were actually scared. The side was not the railway still standing upright. A carriage dangled on the edge of a broken railway line. It had been the return journey. 3 more minutes and that would be up in them. He pulled himself away from the glass. Eureka! "Look outside," he whispered, "I think the quirk might be capable of knocking us off." The glass was cold against her palm. It was appreciated against the sweat that had built up on her palms. Blood trickled down her lip from where she had bit it hard. "Fuck. I don't reckon we're getting to school on time, but hey, we're going to be fine seeing as we stopped early enough." His voice was projected. Or maybe the sound seemed heightened because of the silence in the carriage as everyone took in his words. "The fight will wrap up soon seeing as people are injured. Heroes or police will be prioritizing us because that's what they do. Yeah, I mean, saving people is the core of heroics, and now they know more information, they'll use the time efficiently to make sure we're okay." Aizawa gave us a huge lecture about it after our first lesson. "You know, the whole point of heroes is to save everyone." It was really scary, but the most useful hour as well. I think it's going to stick with me forever. Midoriya had never heard about that talk before. She had slouched out of school groaning about the workload she had been set along. Then proceeded to scream about not even knowing why she had to learn about the importance of not having a cape and smart hero costume choices. He raised an eyebrow but played along. They needed something to talk about anyways. "Have I told you in orientation?" Nizu stood up and he was like, "You will never need to know what happens if you get caught in a villain attack because we value your education and we will leave our job if we can. If that's not possible, we expect you to walk out of the dangerous situation to make the most of this wondrous education we have given you." "Okay then, Midoriya, get up and walk out. Make the most of your education." Eureka threatened as she tried to pull him out from his seat. He stayed firmly seated as she tried to get him on the floor. His arm wasn't dislocated, so she wasn't trying, but Okako still gave him a run for his money. They were giggling as Midoriya got inches closer to the floor when they rocked again. They scrambled back into their seats instantly. It hadn't been a small wobble unlike last time. Even if they hadn't been stuck still, everyone would have felt it. He slid down his seat and banged against the wall. Eureka slammed down from beside him before they tilted up again. Those on the other end of the train had either fallen to the floor or when they had fallen face first on their seats. Everyone scrambled to the windows to get a look at what had caused the rock. No one expected to see a carriage broken in half and the bridge smashed through. Izuku gasped for breaths at the sight as he pulled away. Anyone else who had the misfortune of seeing it had the color drained from their skin. Eureka had gone slightly green, her thumb rubbed around one of the pressure points Izuku had pointed out to her. There was no sound. A pin could drop and it would be muted. Everyone's hearing cut off automatically. There was sound. Of course there was sound. There was the rocking of the carriage they had all become hyper-aware of. Everyone panted. That was a sound everyone could hear. There may not have been any babies crying, but there were adults weeping. It was hard to spot a person on the carriage who didn't have a tear down their eye as they seemingly watched their imitate doom. Death by falling seemed like such a horrible way to go. Izuku had previously found the thought of falling, of gliding, a peaceful thought. He choked on his breaths as they stayed on the track with the risk of being tore off any second. Paradox, an oxymoron. Silent and loud at the same time. The two cancel each other out despite being the only way to describe the situation. In a comparison to a normal train passage, it was deathly silent. To the passengers, however, the noise was overwhelming. Some people revel in the silence, yet the breaths were too loud, deafening loud. For others the silence shook them to the core. Eureka got shivers down her spine as the noise tapered off. Beforehand, the panic had been constant. They waited now. Either someone had to come rescue them or they gambled their lives on whether they would be caught in the attack or not. Who are the heroes on scene? Someone asked, breaking through the silence like a knife through fabric. Eureka pulled up her phone, grateful to have a distraction. You probably wouldn't recognize them. They're rising up the ranks, haven't even hit the top 500 yet. They aren't handling this the best, but I am sure we'll be rescued soon. The causalities will bring rescue heroes like 13 here soon. Do you like 13? People like being cared for in times of panic because humans are pack creatures. Comfort is found in the company of others and being allowed to show emotions. It was why Bakugo could never dream of being a hero. Safety is more than physical safety and also mental safety. Security and safety are often synonymous, not always but most of the time. Everyone on the train is physically safe for now. Okako trusts her skills in situational awareness. They are not falling off the rails yet and she can do nothing if they do. She can save herself and a few others, but that's not enough. The only risk posed to them was mental well-being. Eureka could do that. The first rule of thumb was to take the mind off the situation right now. The aftermath would not be soft, but then again aftermaths are never soft. That wasn't her issue, that was the issue of psychiatrists. What she had to focus on was the now was. Everyone on the train had began to listen in on the conversation. More than one person had responded to Yurika's question, including Izuku. It became a game of who's the hero. Heroes was a universal subject, everyone knew the ones in the limelight. It was natural that when trying to get people involved the topic would go there. An unconscious thought of comfort, and everyone included. Yurika didn't like to brag, but she thought that was a smart move on her part. They went back and forth until the doors were pulled open. 3 heroes stood outside the carriage door sighing in relief at all the people not being crouched in balls. They pulled themselves up and scaled the arena. Passengers were practically jumping on them. Izuku looked up to see Kamui Woods among those who had came. That had been a recent development. Things must have been getting out of hand fast. Okay, we're going to evacuate you one by one in an orderly fashion. No pushing, no fighting, you'll get out. We're going to prioritize younger children first, so if you're an adult we ask you remain seated for now. All personality seemed sucked out of him, but Midoriya followed along afterwards. He ignored how Kamui Woods avoided escorting him out and instead left him to the other heroes. He was pulled out of the train and lowered onto the floor. Looking up, they had been suspended in air for what seemed like hours. They could see how close the carriage had actually been when it fell. It had been pure luck they survived. A check on his phone and they had been ignored for half an hour. The shock began to die down as he let himself be smothered by the cleanup and heroes around him. The villain was being escorted into the police car. It was all around Izuku and Yurika as they waited for further instructions. They had taken their bag down with them. They could return to school. When given the clear, that was what they did. Chapter 28, How My School Found My Instagram Account and It Didn't Go Apeshit, Not Clickbait, a story time by Midoriya Izuku. Whoa Midoriya, you're in the news again. The kid was bombarded as he entered the classroom halfway through the period 1. He gave a shaky wave to the teacher. They had seen the news, they must have done. That meant Midoriya was safe from the prying questions and lack of permission slip he would be met with. Villain attack. He summarized regardless. The teacher nodded. In a world of heroes and superpowers is wasn't a hard belief to have. He slipped past the desks and into his own where Shinsu stared at him. The explanation would have to wait. A room of media-starved kids would claw at all his words. They'd be on Tumblr by break and Izuku was still reeling from the interview earlier. He focused his attention to the sheet in front of him and flexed his fingers. I'll explain better at break. I don't want to be sold out to reporters right now. He explained. You better, Shinsu drawled as he leaned over his desk and scribbled a maths equation onto his piece of work. That's how you do the maths problems, by the way. I don't think the teacher will go over it with you when she has. He gestured to the mess of people all nattering at the top of their lungs, to deal with as well. Izuku chuckled, I wouldn't want to as well. So, does this actually work like this, or is there a fancy calculator move going on that I'm missing? How can root 8 be simplified to 2 root 2? Wouldn't it be simpler to make it 2 cubed? SHH, it's part of the fancy maths puzzle you see. Anyways, it works best when the numbers can't be cubed. This was just an example. I'll do it with another. Just, let me think. Shinsu denied. Midoriya nodded, yeah, wish they sent me this while I was on the train. I really needed something over than the fall to think about back then. I'm sure a maths major would have agreed to do it for me as well. That would have been amazing. Hello teacher, I was caught in a villain attack but a smart kid helped me out, want to see? He grinned as he copied the method into his book, disregarding the maths sheet for that second. So, you divide by a square number, move that factor out of the bus shelter but keep the other in it as the answer. Is it generally that simple? Yeah, pretty much. It gets harder but we haven't gone over that yet, so we'll leave that. Just do section A and tell me about the interview you did, because the whole form is raving about it before you got more internet fame point by being in a villain attack with casualties. No one knew if you were okay and now everyone's bothered for 1 or 2 reasons. I feel so sorry for you, seeing as break starts and you won't be able to escape. You're just upset you're going to be caught in the crossfire and we'll have a repeat on the bathroom incident. That is also a possibility why I am upset. It isn't the only reason though. I also don't like you getting all the attention. Izuku giggled and rolled his eyes. He continued to trudge through the worksheet as his classmates murmured about him. It had never been his strong spot, but the distraction was welcome. When he placed the pen down, the teacher was back on the whiteboard explaining the next part of the problem. Despite the terrible morning, the day didn't feel so bad. Midoriya crashed into Monoma Nioto. He knew who the blonde was because Eureka never shut up about the terror he brought upon her class. His actions varied from leading a mob to them before the sports festival to tormenting Bakugo to make them look bad. He figured the brat wouldn't give a flying fuck about him. How would he even recognize Midoriya when the only thing he was really famous for was being that quirkless kid on a talk show? Emphasis on talk show. No one had seen his face. The only way anyone would have seen his face was if they went to his page. That took effort, and effort blessed powerful quirk kids didn't care to give. Problems always sorted themselves out for them. It happened to everyone else as well. Everyone laughed at them from above. Nothing had fallen out. It was much more Izuku collapsed on Nioto and in his scuffle to not fall on him smashed backwards. They both sat up and rubbed the back of their head. The world was ringing, which was weird. He was fairly sure the alarm wasn't going off, and no one had a quirk that made a small buzz in his ear 20 times worse than he remembered. Nioto was in a similar position, but he didn't ask why he had bumped into him. He just rolled his eyes and offered his hand for Midoriya to take. Which was weird, he couldn't remember seeing Nioto stand up. He placed his hand on the ground even if it felt miles further than where it was. Using the remaining hand, he pulled himself up to stand beside him. Midoriya staggered into him again. Really? He asked. Monoma, I helped you up, can you not collapse into me again? Has the fame gone to your head? I thought the whole account gimmyish was that you were this humble boy who everyone hated, as if you had the only problems in the world. You know my account. There was a lot to unpack his sentence. Izuku didn't know why he fixated on that fact he was recognized instead of denying he didn't have all the problems in the world. Later in his room, he'd lie in bed awake thinking about that. Well, yeah. What, do you seriously still think you're that humble? He sneered. Everyone knows, and now people are like, hero students have no problems with their smoncy quirks, as if we can't face anything wrong. Oh, you know, it's not as if people have called me basically quirkless my whole life because I rely on others. My future relies on others, I'll never get anywhere on my own. Well, guess what did? I proved them all wrong. What are you doing? Begging for attention with the one a horse. I never said you couldn't have troubles. You just, basically quirkless doesn't make you likely to be dead in a ditch. For someone who claims to love status 6, surely you didn't realize that it isn't the actual quirkless part that drives your kind off the river, is it? It's the bullying. I got it as well. Izuku stumbled back. He kept himself on his feet this time. His eyes widened and his head bobbed as if the string keeping it up had been cut. It was kind of hard to tell. With your brash actions, you know. Can we? Everyone around looked at them. Do this somewhere more private. Nioto nodded as he was pulled out from the crowds. The two had hidden in the unused staircase to the rooftops. Can you tell me about your experience? I've never met someone who was bullied for being quirkless. Or near quirkless. Obviously Hitachi was bullied for having an amazing quirk, but it's not exactly like being told you have to be codependent, you know. And why should I? You just yelled at me. I think I deserve this. Anyways, no one's going to give a shit if you don't tell anybody. What, so you can profit off my story? Pa. I'd rather die than do that. Nioto took off only for his sleeve to be grabbed by Midoriya. Profit with us then. We meet up after school. For the account then, we'll get you logged in if you can get along with 2 of my friends from 1A. It's today. I'll add you to the group chat we have and everything. I'll try it out. Now let go of my sleeve, you're that clingy. Midoriya let go of the cuff and let Nioto walk out of the class. Once he was out of eyesight, Izuku left. He pulled his phone up. It was only fair to let everyone else know. Chekhov's gun. Fre Shav do, 2 things. Catnip SMTH, go ahead. Fre Shav do, 1, Nioto's joining us in the thing today. We just had a nice heart-to-heart on a staircase. 2, why the fuck has the group chat name changed? I like barking dogs seldom bite. It was funny for what we were doing. Vamp bitch, Tashi, I thought it va it bet tier. Tongue sticking out, catnip SMTH, dramatic purposes. Uwurika, so are we just ignoring he let an asshole join us? Catnip SMTH, no, we need someone else. W brain cells here. Midoriya can't carry your weight as a hero student. Uwurika, I am wounded, sad face. Anyways, can I add Toto? He's sticking round today because we're roomies, laughing face. Vamp bitch, Oka you replaced me, crying face. I thought we were gonna be roomies when I get out of safety procedures blah blah. Catnip SMTH, so are we just all accepting that we have 3 new guys joining us? FRE SHA VACA do, might as well dash backslash underscore o underscore slash. Catnip SMTH, well then can we expect Zuko's GF to be there as well? FRE SHA VACA do? Vamp bitch, you've been cheating, surprised face. FRE SHA VACA do, no PLS I don't know who my GF is. Catnip SMTH, OML. May, you know the girl you're always with? FRE SHA VACA do, we're friends. Uwurika, I don't know if I agree. You there? You seem closer than friends. FRE SHA VACA do, I hate you all. Catnip SMTH, love you too. FRE SHA VACA do, I'm adding Nioto then leaving you all to suffer. Uwurika, double frowny face. FRE SHA VACA do added, Monoma Nioto. Uwurika, can I add Toto? FRE SHA VACA do, can I stop you? Uwurika, number 3. Wait. Catnip SMTH, LOL. Uwurika, Ito give me admin perms. You know how much you love MEE. Vamp bitch, triggered. FRE SHA CA do, send me his contact. Monoma Nioto, is this the GC then? I thought you'd all have something more professional. Uwurika, STFU3, or here because of Izu. FRE SHA VACA do added, Todoroki Shouto and Mei Hatsum. FRE SHA VACA do, if you all insist that I'm dating Mei then she can be in the GC and deny it. Todoroki Shouto, hello. How's everyone? Monoma Nioto, oh stop being such a stuck-up ass. Mei Hatsum, oh. FRE SHA VACA do, Hitachi, you have the honors, change their nicknames, smiley face. Catnip SMTH changed Todoroki Shouto's name to Free Freezer and Microwave. Catnip SMTH changed Monoma Nioto's name to Stuck-Up Bastard, smiley face. Catnip SMTH changed Mei Hatsum's name to Izu's Girl. FRE SHA VACA do, change Mei's. PLS we aren't dating. Catnip SMTH, then Mei can tell us what you two do every lunch. FRE SHA VACA do, sad face. Izu's Girl, we make babies. We have a new one for you actually, he insisted we made it. Wanna come to the support tomorrow and see? Catnip SMTH, I rest my case. FRE SHA VACA do changed Izu's Girl's name to Professional Baby Maker. Vamp bitch, I prefer that name, smiley face. Uwurika, oh shut up Toga. Izuku pulled up more tables than normal much to Midnight's and present mix confusion. He gave a shaky smile as he explained the 3 new members to the group. Shinsu hummed along as he made vague gestures to what happened when he bumped into Monoma. Anyways, if he's actually bothered he should be coming with Urarika, Todoroki, and Himiko. Todoroki is Urarika's new roommate but we aren't really sure why. He's the only one I don't expect to be a new constant. Himi is obviously using this when Blood King is chilling in the staff room. She was interested as well though and I think calmer ways of going across her motivations might also help with the crash course to heroics. He pulled the chairs out to let everyone sit down as soon as they came in. Shinsu had been sat on a table beforehand. He moved to the seat. The two stared at the door as the hero students walked out of their overly hyped physical education lesson as if they had just gone to war. They could have done, how would they know? Each of them chose their respective seats. Urarika sat beside Izuku where she always did, as his left-hand woman. Eventually the hierarchy set itself in place. Izuku placed his hands on the table and sighed. So apparently we peaked internet fame. I think we need to discuss where we planned on going with fighting Quirkism and Viva la Quirkless currently trending on Twitter. Okako and I discussed some things on the train earlier today. We were thinking statistics. Statistics? Pa. Surely everyone here has some sort of sob story here. Just use that and everyone will flock over. Nioto exclaimed as he glared at them all. Toga yawned while Shinsu sighed. He clapped his hands together and pointed them down. Okay listen, he explained, "T isn't that we don't have sob stories, but they only tug at empathetic people's heartstrings, and most people do not give a shit. Considering your oh so sad story though, surely you must be able to relate with me there / It's all performative, because when they meet you in real life, how many fucks do they give? Ever? Yeah, but that's never going to change, is it? You all aren't utilizing what you have. No one's story's the same, Monoma. Some people here like Yurika or Todoroki aren't treated poorly or bad. How can she help us? This is our battle, but they're here to help, so we need to let them." Midnight said at the start of this whole group meeting. "People love statistics." Nemuri nodded. "I have to agree with Mito here. There's going to be a lot of sob stories circling right now, hopping on the bandwagon. Give them evidence they can't disprove. The real question here is, how are you guys going to find these statistics? Nearly nothing accessible is up to date. I saw some while scrolling. Is that accurate at all, do you think, or is that Twitter bullshit? I mean, Google goes far back. We were wondering if we could have advice on how to check validity of sources actually." Okako explained, "And Izuku has a book. I saw it when we first met. That'd be valid, wouldn't it? That was a library book. We can take it out again." Present Mike hummed, "So a statistics error then. Does anyone here have any ideas as to what we can do it on?" Toga was the first one to speak up, "Bullying and villainy." Yurika added onto that, "Bullying and quirkism. Homelessness rates and quirk types. Along with ages. There are some homeless shelters that would be okay with us asking questions there. Monoma, Todoroki. Any ideas?" Present Mike asked, probing them into joining in. Niato scoffed. Shinsu clicked his tongue in response to the silence that they were met with. Yamada raised an eyebrow in Todoroki's direction. He wasn't going to get a response, but the man could try. "Is quirk marriages something you guys would cover? Or is that something you want to ignore? Kids being sold off to raise powerful kids. How do you respond to that?" They wrote it down, big bold lettering. It was important. Todoroki looked down at the table. He fiddled with his fingers. Words clogged in Izuku's mouth until the only thing he could say was, "Nice. Any other ideas?" "I think we have enough for now," Yurika stated as she looked down the list. "We can work on finding information for them as soon as we're home and settled." "Yep." They all smiled as they pulled their chairs back. "See you next week then? Monoma, Todoroki, will you two be coming back? We can remove you from the group chat if you'd like." They both nodded, which wasn't a clear answer. He was going to take it as a yes though. Izuku waved as he headed towards the door last. He had lingered about to see them all off out of the door. The leader role must have been getting to him. He went to shut the door and call his thanks to Mike and Midnight as per usual when his hair was ruffled. Izuku looked up to see Present Mic's hand in his hair. "I didn't get to congratulate you on that radio show, you did I? Well, really you should be thanking the Akiko and Tatsuo for having me on. It's all their work that got me here. Talking about actually being able to make a change. It feels so unreal. Don't forget your own hard work, kiddo. You're the reason they reached out. I don't know many people who can reach their standards. The two can't stand for anything wrong. It would have been you who prompted them to even make that episode anyways. This is just as much yours and Yurika's and Shinsu's for making this change. This is all because you rammed into a wall one day in excitement. Remember that?" Midoriya nodded, sucking up whatever praise he could. In the corner of the room stood Midnight, nodding along to every word his teacher, a pro hero, said. His cheeks had gone rosy in the span of a few seconds. "I'll keep it in mind, but I really have to catch the strain," Izuku said as he inched closer to the door. "I'd hate to keep you waiting then," Mike said. Izuku grinned and walked out of the room. He ran down the corridor. Yurika pushed a box out of the corridor and into her lounge. There wasn't much stuff to unpack, but the 2 boxes Todoroki had with him to unpack were stuffed to the brim with junk. They had been pushing the second box up the stairs for what felt like hours, and she still had no idea what was in it. She leaned against it and sighed, "Geez, that was heavy. What was in there, Xiao? I thought we agreed you didn't need a desk or anything, just anything personal and clothes." "The mattress was in the other box. How much sentimental shit do you have, and why is it so damn heavy?" He opened the box. "It's 2 years old things. I didn't want them to get thrown out, so I've been storing them since his passing." "Oh. I'm sorry about that." What do you have to be sorry for? He died in a fire of his own making. The only one who has to be sorry is Endeavor. Her hand rested on his back, it saying, that I wish you didn't have to go through that. Right. Well, I should go unpack this all, shouldn't I? That'd probably be a good idea. They drifted into silence as Todoroki on his own moved the box into the spare room. Okako flopped down on the blankets and bundled them around her. On the coffee table lay the handouts she'd been given a few weeks ago for the local pizza place and her phone. Hey Shouto. How do you feel about takeout tonight? It'll be Italian. Chapter 29, Dear God, I kindly ask that I never had to go to the police ever again, but here I am. At a police station with traumatized kids. Do you want to meet my fist? They had gone with homelessness and quirks as their first choice to tackle next. Shinsu had managed to persuade the local homeless shelter for kids with volatile and the likes of that quirks to let them talk. It was just Izuku and Hitachi outside the door to keep the numbers as low as possible. He hadn't received a clear reason to why that was, but he respected the wish. It would likely be a safety issue from what Midoriya had been told. They had no clue if the kids would hurt them due to an out-of-control quirk. Shinsu knew from his experience people weren't keen on them either. It apparently wasn't rare for one to be attacked to try and rid the world of scum. If he had ever been in one, the police had been called in time. The door opened and a small, spindly woman looked out at them all. Her skin clung to her bones, and if it wasn't for the worn-down jumper, they could have counted her bones. Hitachi smiled at her and Izuku was immediately pushed out of the way to allow her to hug him. Shinsu stood there as if he had no idea what was going on. They've been looking forward to your visit for months now, come on. Everyone's so excited to see you and meet your friend. They haven't shut up since I announced it. Down the hallway. You know where. Come and ask me if you have any questions for that post you mentioned. We will do. Do you mind if we come in? It's kind of cold outside. Shinsu chuckled as he pushed himself out of her arms. We'll go say hello to the kids. Oh, of course. She stood to the side so they could enter the building. If it passed as a building. The support beams still stood because without them the ceiling would fall in on itself. The roof didn't need the bars removed to crash. There was a gentle drip drop of water as it splashed down to hit his head. It was going to collapse one day soon, but for then the water could slowly erode the resistance away. Grease was slathered on the walls from recently abandoned kids dragging hands across the wall that had just eaten fast food. Mold festered in the corners, the black sludge spreading across the hems on the floor. As they continued on, puddles became more common. Midoriya had a pair of proper trainers, but as they reached the actual room his socks had turned gray from the muck in the water. It was disgusting, no one would go there on their own accord. There were other, better off shelters. This ruin had to be a last resort. What made it worse, were the amount of eyes that stared at them. Izuku could count at least 40 heads before he saw into the corners and other hiding spots. If he had to wage a guess, there was a low of 80. 80 children of varying ages who had been kicked out from everywhere. If there was a doubt in his mind as to why Himiko chose to be a murderer over this, it vanished in a second. What the fuck? He whispered to himself. What's fuck? A small kid who had wrapped himself around Shinsu's leg asked. It's a bad word for when something's bad. You shouldn't say it. Rico fucked my cookie. Shinsu did a spit take. He patted the boy on the head and reassured him that he would learn the word when he grew up and to never mention it to anyone. It was a mistake of mine to say that. Lots of adults don't like it when I say words like that, and I'm 4 times your age. You wouldn't want to see their reactions if you said it to anyone. A girl with puffy short hair chases after him with cookie crumbs down her chin. Adults don't care what we do or say or what we're anything really. As long as we're out of their way. The kid nodded, yeah. And I'm a big kid. I can stand a bit of trouble. Rico and I are big. If an adult gets mad, we'll show em who's boss. Shinsu crouched down to his level. The kid unwrapped his arms. Then what if the word's a secret? Just between you and me. I'm good at keeping secrets. He exclaims, no one will ever know. Izuku chuckles, I'm sure you are. Why don't you show us what's around here? Toshi's been a terrible tour guide so far. All I've seen is some lame corridor. Then we'll show you everything. Come on Alice, Shinny. Let's go show your friend all around our super epic hangout. She gripped his hand and pulled him away from the doorway before he could protest. Beside him, Shinsu followed close by. He was pulled along by Alice. "That's my bongos. Mama and Papa wanted to throw them out but I saved them from the bin men," she exclaimed as she banged one hand on them. The sound was louder than it should be. His hands clamped round his ears to do as little as possible. Riko bounced around the small group. She ignored the cries that it was too loud. One older kid had screamed out that it was no wonder she had been kicked out. Shinsu said nothing. He gave a pitying smile and went on with Alice to view what had changed since he had left. Izuku followed in their stride and others soon chased after him. He was the animal in the petting view because no one new ever came there for the fun of it. It didn't take a genius to figure out why. The further they ventured, the worse the lighting got. Windows were scarce and the bulbs had burst weeks ago. Occasionally, there was a flicker of a spark. It wasn't enough to see out from. They were traveling from memory. "Do you guys want a flashlight? I have one on my phone," he offered, pulling the metal device out of pocket. It wasn't why he brought it but it was needed. As long as it lasted would hopefully be enough for them to come back into the orangey meeting room everyone else had been in. When the light blasts, Izuku wishes he hadn't known. Bloody handprints litter the wall as people have held themselves up against it. He could see the dust he choked on creeping towards him. The floorboards squeaked as he seized on them. It wasn't like the creaky stairs he prayed it had been. Nails were loose from where they'd been unscrewed. Padding around barefoot would lead to nasty wounds. His foot got stuck. As Midoriya pulled the sole of his shoe off he found a pile of gum there. His face crumpled. "What is that?" Alice stopped to look at it as well. He gasped, "Oh. That's ENA's." She stole a whole pot of gum and chewed it at once. It was really cool. "Can you also do that?" "Put it in the bin this time though. Mako stepped in at once and we had to go to hospital. We keep it an ornament." "Yeah. That's cool. Do you want to show us what's down here? Is this a secret as well or a stinky common place like the bedrooms?" "We're going to see my bedroom. My bedroom's cooler than Riko's so naturally, you'll see mine first," Alice exclaimed. He didn't see Riko pouting at the so-called fact. Shinsu laughed, "I'm sure they're both great." "Yeah Alice. They're identical anyways. We all know it's because I'm a girl you can't go in my super special room." Riko grabbed Izuku's hand and dragged him down the corridor. They reached the crossroads where Izuku assumed would be the turning point for the boys' and girls' room. Alice was chasing after them with Shinsu in tow screaming more profanities than the one Midoriya had taught him that day. The child only giggled and continued to pull him down with the torch in tow. She hopped over the broken toys discarded on the floor with practiced ease. Izuku tiptoes after her before they reached Anodor Square. It wasn't large, a storage room in a warehouse at best. The sleeping bags were like rocks. His fingers almost touched when he checked the thickness of the scratchy fabric. He was nearly shivering from the thought of being under that at night. Several of them had holes that he could see. Midoriya didn't want to think about the ones with holes that he couldn't see. Clothes were chucked about creating a safer carpet than the overused floorboards. Wet patches spread across the room. There was another leak that ticked as it sent droplet after droplet down. Riko bounced on the sleeping bag. "What do you think? It's better than Alice's. You haven't even seen Alice's room yet. Come on, I'll show you." She kept her hand wrapped in his and they ventured out of the girls' room and into the boys'. They were at the halfway point when they met Shinsu and Alice. The two having wandered at a snail's pace. "I've seen Riko's room. Do you want to take us to yours, Alice?" "Yeah. Then you'll agree mine is far better. Won't you?" "He's already said mine's the best." "Well, you did say I haven't seen them both yet. I should see for myself just to make sure." "See? That wasn't him agreeing with you. He only said sure, not I think. Guys, we need to speak to everyone else and the nice lady who looks after you as." His ears shattered. The roof seemed to tilt in of itself. Screams were echoing as the domino went off. Sawdust sprayed round the room. With one hand, Midoriya smothered his coughs with his sleeves. Beside him Shinsu did the same. The children shuffled beside them in silence. He might have imagined the small whimpers of, "I don't think is a drill." They never sent the ceiling down before. Shinsu held one finger up. They both went silent. It was them in the corridor alone. Izuku flicked off the flashlight. They were trying to avoid attention. There were gunshots. "This isn't a drill, Do you guys remember how to get out in these situations? Has it changed at all since I was last year? They shook their heads. Izuku glanced at Shinsu. The purplenet zipped his lips. No time to explain. Be silent and head to the girl's room. There should be a fire extinguisher in there. That's going to be the closest thing we can use. There were nods. 4 kids who had been as alive as they could be earlier. It was freaky. They moved mechanically. Shinsu pushed the door open. He only flinched when another bullet went off. Soon followed by a scream. Hitachi didn't bother to calm himself down. There was no time. Instead, soothing the children came down to Midoriya to do. The fire extinguisher had to be used first. Izuku didn't know what it would do, but he trusted his friend with the weapon. It twisted round in his hands. Shinsu walked away from the area, with the metal lying horizontal. With as much force as he could muster, he rammed it into the wall. The wall splintered, but he went at it again. This time hitting the weak bricks. Then again and again and again. The walls came crumbling down with a crash. The smallest gap was enough for Hitachi to go at it with his hands. Izuku came to his side, pulling the bricks out with all his force. Adrenaline pumped through his body while people talked about how to check for anyone they missed. He was sick in his mouth. If they come here, would you brainwash them? If I can get to them before the bullets get to me. It shouldn't come to that. Do you think this is thick enough to climb through? It would be a tight fit. Izuku nodded. We should be able to do it. Get the kids over first. Izuku waved the children over. They shuffled forwards before putting one hand on the wet concrete. Alice shivered but continued crawling through. Once they were safely through, Izuku gestured for Hitachi to follow after them. Come straight after me. If you aren't at my feet, I will panic. He followed soon after. His head nearly bumping on the ceiling. They kept on creeping. Until they pulled out at the other side. There are reporters at every corner and it's just them. Only they are there. The 4 of them. There was no crowd of abandoned kids huddled round watching their home burn. It's just him, Shinsu, and the kids who are too young to truly understand what is going on. It makes Izuku want to be sick, with how lucky he is. That if he had gone 1 second later, someone else would have introduced him. He'd be in the main hall. He'd be dead. The police were there. In the door asking questions, gathering statements. Izuku's done it all the times before. That was the first time it had been because someone else was attacked. It made him sick. It made him chuck up anything he still had in his system at Hitachi's feet. The purplenet had gone blank as a sheet. He still had the emotional capacity to inch away and wince at the smell. Everything's dulled for Izuku. Everything stopped. His nose didn't work, nor did his touch or hearing. Midoriya's hands shook. He could hardly keep himself up. His vision was dotting about. His vision went. Midoriya wakes up in the police station with Shinsu sitting beside him. There's a thick blanket bundled around him that he struggles to look up to see past his friend's phone and the ceiling. He's pushed back down with one finger on his forehead. Stay still, you went into shock. Passed out in your own vomit. It was lovely. He flopped back down on the sofa. How long have I been out? Have you messaged my mum and everyone? It's going to be on the news and I really don't want that. Shut up. I've told our friends and the police had to call your mum. They explained why you couldn't explain yourself. She's coming as soon as she's out of work, by the way. We're being held until someone can come pick us up. The kids have already been taken to foster care. Did anyone else make it out? Last time I checked on the news they found at least 80 dead, but they have found a few with minor and major injuries. They've been taken to hospital. Okay. Can I go get some fresh air? No, you're on strict bed rest. Shock, remember? Sure as hell doesn't feel like it? Shut up and go back to sleep. When Izuku wakes up for the second time, Shinsu isn't there. It wasn't a straight pass that he can go outside, but it isn't a no either. He swung his legs round the sofa and pulled the shiny blanket off of him. His feet could barely hold him. The wall is a pillar of balance for his first few steps out of the office. He pulls himself on his own 2 feet after the corridor. If he had been in shock before, he's calmed down now. That isn't how it works, but whatever floats his boat. He stopped showing symptoms halfway through the nap. He was fine. Muafasta is a small place from the center, he decided. It's not even a 2-hour walk to his house. A tourist could see the place in a day if they were dedicated. That's why he spots the tower from all those months ago. Months, it didn't seem like that long. Izuku sees it, but that doesn't answer why he goes up there. It's abandoned, the only purpose is to make the town look fuller than it really is. Stupid, but Izuku doesn't think he'd get rid of it if he had the choice. Memories are fickle things. In the end, it doesn't matter if he climbed up there to jump or in a fanboyish hope All Might would be there and he could relieve the day. In the end, all that matters is that he pushed the door open to the sky-high breeze. He's 7 floors in the air. There's 7 floors in the air. Midoriya isn't alone. He spots the guy before he spots the shoes. They're trainers, bright red like his own. They lay on the roof with a piece of paper tucked under the laces. Are you okay? God, how stupid was he? You didn't say that. The only upside was that the kid didn't throw himself off the roof. Can I come closer? Yeah. They choke out. It's stuttered and broken, but Midoriya doesn't comment. He only inches until he's at the bar that's meant to keep them safe. Too close. It's fine. He has a clear view of their face now. They're wet and red. He isn't puffy from crying too much. The tears are silent on the most part and the flush is from him walking in. Do you want to talk about it? Or we could talk about some pre-quirk artists if you want to avoid all this. He laughed. You don't have to skirt around it. That shelter for kids with troublesome quirks. That was my home. I'm homeless now and no one wants a quirkless kid. Yeah, being quirkless does suck. His mouth opened before he shuts it. Midoriya continued, we're all over Twitter and we're trending again because one hate crime finally hit the news. Everyone's saying it's all big talk. No one takes us seriously, blah blah, barking dogs seldom bite. I personally think it's bullshit. Why's that? They're right. The media's a weapon, it's our bite. We spoke up once and now we're trying to take action. It's not us threatening to do it. People are slowly going to start making a difference. Then you'll back on this day and this, fuck that was a darn era. What's it matter, the world's better without me anyways. I'm useless and I'd be useless with a quirk. It's not going to get better. It isn't going to get better right now. I'm scared it's all going to be for nothing. Maybe all my life is better down on the gravel. In the end, I tell myself until any hope of a look up to keep going. I hope you can do the same. Walking away felt wrong, but there was nothing else to do. Midoriya had done it all wrong. He wanted to run and hide, so that's what he did. You couldn't just talk a stranger down. He would have wanted to be left alone. He was the door when the kid spoke again. Are you going to call the police? Force me down. It's your choice in the end. He scrambled down the stairs. It was once he opened back at ground level it hit him. Midoriya didn't even catch the kid's name. In the end, he would never learn the name. There was nothing on a quirkless teen suicide on the news that day. He'd tell Shinsu about him later. What Izuku did later. In the end, all he wanted to do was dream. Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below. It really helps with the algorithms. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.